Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name's Kit, and this is my world. Thank you very much for joining me. In this episode, I'm going to be doing the classic book title tag, originally by Ariel at a Cuppa Books. I'll leave a link in the description, and I stole this tag from Maria at MH Books. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Question number 1. A Tale of Two Cities. What two fictional cities or places would you have a hard time choosing between if you were told you would get to move there? I'm going to say the Minwanabi Estates in Suranuwani, which is on the planet of Kelawan. That is from the Empire trilogy by Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wirtz. Also, all the Rift War books and other books, they're all set in the same universe, although the Empire trilogy specifically takes place on Kelawan in the Suranuwani Empire. And the Minwanabi Estates are absolutely beautiful. Stunning, very well designed, very well fortified. They are actually the ancestral estates of the main enemy in the books, but they eventually get captured and taken over by our heroine, Mara. And I would have to choose between that and Dun Canabane, which I believe is on the Devery-Eldith border, and those, of course, are places in the Catherine Kerr books, beginning with Daggerspell and continuing for many, many books. Devery is the main area that you get to spend time in. It's a magnificently gritty and real place, and Eldith is the borderlands, and that sort of heads off in the direction of where the elves live. And on the border is a place called Dun Canabane, which is a lonely, isolated, private sort of place, beautiful, on the coastline. There's a big lighthouse. It's a very nice place to live. Question number 2. Les Miserables. What book made you miserable, i.e. you cried, yelled, or threw it across the room? Well, obviously, I'm a grown-up and I wear big boy pants, so I didn't yell or throw any book across the room, but I cried a lot at Fool's Errand, which is one of the many Robin Hobb books which I may have told you about in the past. This specific book had a specific event which made me cry so much that I struggle with it even to this day. Question number 3. Frankenstein. Who is your favourite villain who is maybe just misunderstood? Well, I'm currently working my way through the entire set of Suki Stackhouse books. I know! Who knew? It turns out that I rather like vampire romance. And I particularly like the kind of love triangle between Suki, Vampire Bill, and Vampire Eric. And I think you're supposed to be rooting for Bill. Bill is supposed to be the guy that Suki is meant to be with, but there is always the Eric on the side kind of situation, and I'm enjoying some particularly steamy scenes at the moment between Suki and Eric. A certain amount of wetness is involved, and I just absolutely love Eric. I think he's a brilliant character. I'm not sure if he's specifically supposed to be a villain per se. I think he's another good guy. But if there's a love triangle situation and you're supposed to be rooting for Bill, I guess you could consider Eric the bad guy in that situation. Personally, I prefer Eric, and he's super hot. Question number 4. Pride and Prejudice. Which characters from fiction make up your favourite romantic relationship? Another romance question. Well, as it happens, even though romance is not my genre, I can answer this quite easily. I'm going to say Mara and Kevin from the Empire books. I know you may be a little surprised. I bet you thought I was going to start talking about Outlander, didn't you? And I could, of course, easily mention Outlander, but my absolute favourite romantic relationship is Mara and Kevin in the Empire books by Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wirtz. And the reason for that is because it's such a gritty, real, turbulent relationship. There are huge fights and arguments, there's bitterness, there's lots of tears, there are separations. It's complicated, it's messy, and I really like the realism and the messiness of that particular romance. It's just beautifully written. Question number 5. Lady Chatterley's lover. What book has your favourite hot and bothered steamy scene? Well, again, I'm going to dip into the Empire books because there is a literally hot and bothered and literally steamy scene in one of the books. I think it's Daughter of the Empire. They kind of all blend into one for me. But there's a scene in which Mara, when she's still young and inexperienced, possibly before her first marriage even, she has to seduce a noble lord, a young, vain, rather silly noble lord, and make him fall in love with her as part of one of her long-term schemes and machinations. And part of the seduction takes place in a hot tub. She fills up the hot tub, she steps in, first she disrobes in front of him, he responds in the expected manner, she steps into the hot tub, he joins her, and nookie ensues. But the thing that's most steamy about this particular scene is they don't go all the way. Mara has no intention of actually getting laid. She just wants to make the guy fall in love with her. So it's a beautifully restrained scene because she's drawing him in and then pushing him away and then drawing him in and then pushing him away. And at the prescribed moment, an interruption occurs and she gets to flee the hot tub and leave him somewhat frustrated, but she sends in a serving girl to give him a good time anyway. It's a good scene. It's steamy, literally. Question number 6. The Count of Monte Cristo. Your favourite revenge story? Well, my favourite revenge story, as you well know if you've been watching my channel, is in fact The Count of Monte Cristo, but I don't know if I can say that because that's the title of the prompt. So I'm going to pick another episode from the Empire trilogy. I'm sorry I keep wanging on about the Empire trilogy, but it's so useful for answering tag questions, so you'll just have to forgive me. I'm going to mention the scene which is practically an entire book in its own right. It's a very large section of, I think, Mistress of the Empire, in which Mara's chief spy master and advisor and confidant Arakasi goes off to assassinate the leader of the most dangerous, deadly and impregnable Hamoi Tong. The Hamoi Tong are the Assassins Guild. So this guy is dangerous. He's untouchable. He's one of the most powerful people in the Empire and he's well guarded. But this guy assassinates someone very close to Mara, and so in her lust for revenge, she sends Arakasi on essentially a suicide mission to do the impossible and assassinate not only the leader of the Hamoi Tong, but also to destroy the entire Tong, the entire Assassin's Guild. He is sent off to single-handedly destroy. And he only bloody succeeds. Who knew? It's a marvellous, exciting thriller within a thriller, within an adventure, within a fantasy. It's like a whole little book all on its own, and it's just magnificently well written and tense and gripping. Marvellous stuff. Question number 7. Kindred. In your opinion, what is a book that handles emotional stakes best? In my opinion, an emotional stake is a slice of beef crying its eyes out. Just saying. Anyway, again, I'm going to go for the Empire trilogy. There is so much sacrifice, selflessness, and personal tragedy in those books. It's astonishing. Every single decision that Mara makes can, and often does, affect her very badly. But she sacrifices herself, she sacrifices the people she loves consistently for the betterment of the Empire and society and the poor and everything else. She's a good person and she wants to do right by the people. And so she sacrifices herself. She experiences unbearable losses, but she keeps soldiering on. And those emotional stakes just increase and increase and increase throughout the books. But there is a glorious payoff at the end. In fact, each book ends with a very happy ending, and it keeps you reading. It's not a depressing read, but by God, she goes through hell. Question number 8. And Then There Were None. What mystery or thriller is your favourite? Well, despite the title being one of my favourites, I'm going to say my absolute favourite, which is, of course, Death on the Nile. I love the story of Death on the Nile, although controversially, I don't particularly like the way it's written. Agatha Christie famously stayed at the Old Cataract Hotel in Aswan, Egypt. I've been there.
They will come to you in good time. Does anyone know the way to Delhi?
And having travelled all over Egypt extensively, I am of the firm belief that Agatha Christie never left her hotel room during the entire process of writing the book, because all she describes in the book is what she could see out of the window and possibly what she overheard other guests talking about. It really, as an Egypt traveller, it really doesn't feel much like a book that was actually researched in Egypt, but the story itself is brilliant. It's my favourite Agatha Christie story, and it's very evocative, and I do love the movie with Peter Ustinov. It's my favourite of the Agatha Christie film adaptations. But I read the book in Egypt, loved the story, but didn't much like the descriptions. Question number 9. The Jungle Book. Who or what is your favourite animal sidekick? Mythical animals count too. Well, of course I'm going to say Night Eyes. You know this already. I've discussed Night Eyes at length in various tag videos and also in my Robin Hobb Assassin's Quest blah de blah series. I can't even remember what I named the bloody thing now. Anyway, Night Eyes the wolf, best sidekick ever, and he remains my favourite literary character. Question number 10. Rebecca. Mandalay is a vivid and integral part of the story that feels like another character. What is a book that has a vivid setting that is so real you feel like you were there when you read it? Well, all of the Devery books by Catherine Kerr. I could list lots of other books because I think many of them are very well described in terms of the location. It's part of the whole fantasy thing, isn't it, to create a world? But Devery is by far my favourite and the best fantasy world. It feels gritty and real and muddy and smelly. People have sores and rotting teeth, and the whole thing just feels totally real, but at the same time full of magic and possibilities. And I just love the Devery books. What can I say? They're my favourites still. Question number 11. Call of Cthulhu. What is your favourite horror story that you're glad isn't real? Well, I'm not going to list just one, mainly because horror isn't my thing, but what I will say is anything involving werewolves. I love wolves. I really, really, really love wolves, but I have a terror of werewolves, and this goes way back. It's a terror that I enjoy nurturing. I used to love watching werewolf movies as a child.
Cut, yeah.
And I still love watching werewolf movies. The whole point is that it's fun to be scared, but increasingly when I'm in werewolfy types of places in the real world, I still have that werewolf fear. And the only thing that keeps me from literally shitting my pants is the knowledge far back in the back of my mind that werewolves aren't really real and they don't really exist. But sometimes it feels as if they're real. So I have to hang on to that knowledge that it's all bullshit. Anyway, moving on. Question number 12. The Fellowship of the Ring. Everyone needs friends to accompany their journey. Tag some folks to join you. Well, as you know, I don't like tagging people, and I was going to do a pot full of names, but that didn't feel appropriate somehow. So the question was worded in a way that I couldn't just ignore it, as I sometimes do. So I've asked the question, and I'm now going to say, anyone who loves animals. I tag anyone who loves animals, feel free. If you don't love animals, do not do this tag. That's the closest I can come to tagging people. And on that note, I think I'll call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share, comment, do all the good stuff, and I will see you next time. See you later.